right, so Zach, thank you again for meeting with me today
Yeah,
and also having a full audience. I know that we came in with a beautiful crowd.
Sure.
Something that I really appreciated when I went into your class was that you really spent the time delving into specific evidence and getting the kids to look back at the text. What attributed to that success where all the kids were essentially talking and grounding everything that they were talking through the text?
In evidence, yeah. Like why do I think that's important, or?
Yeah, why do you think that's important and what did you do to set that up?
Yeah, I mean, what I found, and as I've been teaching a lot of times, is we'll start having discussions, and kids won't even be looking at the text. Even when someone's reading something from the text, they won't even be looking at it. So I think I like to ground instruction in the content and in the text.
Yeah.
And so I think whatever they say should be supported with the text.
Yeah.
So just to kind of keep the conversation more grounded and prevent bunny trails and claims that can't be supported.
Yeah.
So.
How do you think that impacts the student learning ultimately?
Good question. I think it allows them to kind of it kind of puts it on them. I think when asking them like, what is the evidence to support that?
Yeah.
Then it's not on me to say that's wrong or right. It's like, what is the evidence? What is the evidence to support it, or which evidence best supports that? So it kind of puts the ball in their court, I think.
Yeah. It gives them the opportunity to do the heavier lift.
Yeah.
And the most difficult part too.
Right.
There was a moment in your lesson at some point that you actually took out 2 pieces of evidence that you heard when they were doing their think, pair, share.
Yeah.
And you wrote kind of like the gist of what they were saying on the board.
Right.
And then you gave students an opportunity to decide which evidence at some point with Quinlan's evidence supported the best one. Was it this student's or was it this student's? What was your purpose for kind of letting students at some point after discussing the evidence choosing like between the two? Like how did you choose between those two?
That's a good question. I mean, choosing relevant evidence is a big part of the standards, I think. I think of RL1. I want kids to think about connections, I think, between the text and what they're saying.
Yeah.
And making sure there's logical connections and, realizing that not all evidence is created equal. You know? And so, and usually it's great grounds for discussion.
Yeah.
It's easy to get them to the end result, of deeper analysis through the lens of like, which evidence just sounds better. I don't know, it seems more tangible and...
Tangible, yes, and I think students felt it too, where they weren't, like you said, like going off on bunny trails of all these random evidence. The 2 evidence, and I know that it was last week, the 2 evidence that you chose, was it one student that you felt like this is probably the strongest evidence? Like, how did you choose between the students on what's right?
I don't remember specifically, but usually what I try to do is choose one that is, usually I find to be the one that's most relevant and one that is not relevant at all.
Okay, so like a very huge contrast between the two.
When it comes to evidence, yes. When it comes to other answers, like writing claims, I think I like to choose more a low and a medium.
Okay.
Because then when students see them, when they end off with the medium one, there's still room for growth and they're not just copying the right answer.
That's important. I'm glad to hear that because I think oftentimes, especially students that are in the medium or even low level, oftentimes they're mimicking something that they feel and that kind of takes away what they're actually writing on their own.
Yep.
So I love how you did that. When you were walking through, when hearing some of their think, pair, share, I noticed and I appreciate you letting us know which students had IEPs and which students you were checking in with. What did you notice? Like I noticed that you had a clipboard. What were you looking for when you were walking around?
I forgot at which point, like just when they're doing their TDQs or talking.
Yeah, it was their TDQs.
Yeah, I think at that point I had a transparency and I was just jotting down notes that I would want to refer to with the whole class discussion.
Okay. What were you noticing when you were checking in? Like, was there a specific place that you were checking in with students first based on their TDQs, or was it just like walking just to kind of hear their responses?
I mean, if it was before the class discussion, if I was just kind of gathering evidence, I think I was going specifically to the students who I suspected would have the low medium and would have the low answer and have the high answer.
Okay, and when you were going in to check in with the students that had the sticker on their desk
Sure.
or the marker, what did you notice when you were walking around?
I noticed gaps
Okay,
for sure
yeah.
with learning. Usually they have trouble finding the relevant evidence or
Okay.
identifying why that evidence matters. There's a lot of times there's a language gap.
Okay,
Where I think they can articulate the answer verbally maybe, but not
Yeah.
in written form. But
okay.
it depends. There's
It
a wide
ranges each
range,
class.
especially in that class.
Yeah.
There's such a range of ELs and SPED students, but
Okay,
yeah. So that's what I was kind of going for.
okay.
And then I was doing the pluses and minuses too,
Yeah, I noticed.
depending on whether they, not like I wasn't looking for a perfect answer for the pluses, but
Yeah.
if they got the idea from the
Mhm.
classroom discussion, if they're
Yeah.
using those keywords that we kind of left off with.
Great. So today I want to kind of ground our discussion in like how you're supporting for the differentiation. I love
Yeah.
how you touched on the fact that every class is going to have a different need,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're looking for your subpopulation of ELs and SPEDs for
Yeah.
that specific class. Let's talk about like an upcoming lesson in terms of your like noticing that there are gaps,
Yeah.
how you want to address that gap, and kind of how you want to monitor like based on their
Sure.
progress from there.
Sure.
So do you want to be able to pull up one of your lessons
Yeah.
that's upcoming up?
Sure.
So it could be like a response from a TDQ. I want us to think of like what is your, I know that there's times when we're doing some of the prep work
Yeah.
for the IP, so you know how we do the annotations for PLCs.
Uh-huh.
So like what is an ideal response that you might have that you want students to land on? And
Yeah.
because there's such a level of differentiation, so for example, is like you had a worksheet that had a lot of the TDQs that were there.
Yeah.
You could pull one of the TDQs where you're like, wow, this is a TDQ that if
Yeah.
they miss the mark on this one, they're not going to be
Sure.
able to finish either the exit slip or the final test.
Okay, so I got one here.
Okay, perfect.
So they're gonna be starting I Have a Dream next week.
Sorry.
So no, great. I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked. So in which lines does King state his purpose? What other? So probably just the first part right here.
Okay,
Which lines does he state his purpose? And then
Okay.
I'll probably have them paraphrase that in their own words
okay,
after they identify it, just to make sure they understand what his purpose of the speech is.
okay. And are you having them look at the evidence for that one, or is this like I want to see if you can rewrite in your own words what his
Both.
purpose is? Okay.
Yeah. So first identify first identify where he does it, which is the evidence, I guess.
Okay,
And then paraphrase it in your own words.
perfect. For that one, which lines do you think you would like students to land on?
What lines?
Mm-hmm.
1 through 16?
Yeah. And
Oh, specifically in
yeah,
that?
specifically, let's look at it together. We can.
Thinking 100 years later, the Negro's still not free.
Okay, and that's the specific line you want them to be able to highlight.
Yes.
So if they can't highlight this, can students still land on the purpose?
If they can't highlight this,
Mm-hmm.
I think they could still possibly get a gist.
Okay,
They'll definitely. It's easy to get distracted, I think, and,
Okay.
and come up with some other conclusions
okay,
as far as what King is doing. But I think to keep it simple, yes, they need to. They need to underline that, and specifically paraphrasing it in their own words. Like, what does it mean, not free?
that can mean a range of
It
things.
can, yeah. So
it sounds like the first thing that you're gonna look for first is to see if they can paraphrase it in their own words. And
Yeah.
the second part is, can they actually underline the evidence that actually supports their paraphrase?
afterwards, yeah.
Afterwards.
So first identify. Okay, this is his purpose. Put it in your own words.
Okay.
Now, what are some? What's your interpretation of not free, or what's King's interpretation of not free? Now,
Okay.
underline those pieces of evidence that connect with that
Okay.
interpretation.
What would be, do you have an ideal response drafted up on what you would like kids to land on?
As far as a paraphrase,
Mhm.
I don't.
Okay, you wanna work on that?
Yeah,
Okay, let's work
let's
on
do
that
it.
since you're,
Sure, that'd be
something
great.
for you to be able to apply to. So actually, if you, let me pull up the I Have a Dream text. I'm excited for this text.
Me too. Me too. I know.
Especially since it's a common
So
one, I
rich.
think that it is very rich, and I think oftentimes, a little